Moral victory, everyone gets all bitter. Oh, it's not a moral victory. It's not a. Are you kidding? That was the epitome of a moral victory. Now, not for the players and not for the coaches to ever say publicly. Although Ron essentially admitted it when he said, we're going to take a lot from this. We're going to grow from this. There's so much positive. Well, that's the essence, the epitome of a moral victory. But for fans and for just sort of the way you feel about that game, that was a moral. That's as good as you're going to feel after a loss.
Yeah.
Obviously your number one desired result is a W. But no sane human being thought going into this season that they would likely beat Buffalo and Philly. You knew they'd lose those games. The Buffalo defeat was humiliating. Sam Howell is just too naive to understand his career as a starter in this league was literally hanging in the balance. If he had another disastrous game back-to-back, people would just move on way quicker than I think he realizes. And he came up, he stepped up big. Bieniemy stepped up. Called his best game from start to finish.
He actually targeted
as an offensive coordinator.
He targeted his top 2 wide receivers heavily.
Now you don't want to fire him.
That's basically what you're supposed to do.
He's back for another week.
Well, I told you if they didn't adjust, and they did adjust.
No, they did.
Max protected. They rolled him out. A lot of quick slants. Literally, I think they listened to the show and just implemented everything that we said.
Almost everything that we talked about last week was different. His game plan, there was balance. The first half was almost 1-to-1 run to pass.
Right.
So they addressed the balance. They successfully ran the football against the Eagles, who had been a brick wall. Not necessarily, 7 yards a carry. It wasn't anything outrageous, but they committed to running the football. And they got touchdown runs. So they did that. They got Terry McLaurin and Dotson involved to a lesser extent.
Had to do that.
Samuel was huge.
They did everything we talked about that they didn't do against the Bills. So I agree it is a moral victory. I told you I believe in moral victories.
And
of
also,
course.
like before the season, look, we're at the quarter pole here, basically. People expected them to mostly be 2-2 or maybe even 1-3. A lot of people thought they're going to go out to Denver and lose that game and maybe be 1-3 at this point. You're 2-2. Now you got the Bears coming in on a short week at home. That's a team you have to take advantage of to get the 3-2.
Now, all that being said, I totally believe in moral victories. There are no moral victories to be had this week, on Thursday.
It's a must-win. You got to beat them.
It's a must-win. And if you lose, there's no moral victories. That's a team you have to beat. And I understand that Fields played maybe his best game. There's no moral victories against Bears.
Maybe he did.
I mean, what are the odds of that? We were killing Fields.
4 touchdown passes.
Good for him. Good for him.
I think he had 3 incompletions.
So they obviously did something right in practice this week.
But he had a terrible fumble.
He did.
Yeah.
And he has a terrible coach that blew the game for them toward the end.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're now incentivized to lose because they hold not only the number 1 pick in the draft, they hold the number 2 pick in the draft because they have Panthers pick.
Right.
So, I mean, they're set up for the complete overhaul if that's what they're, if they want to throw Justin Fields overboard.
By the way, we put it up as the Junkies poll of the day presented by Van Meter Homes. There are actually 2 polls. Moral victory for the Commanders. 62% say yes.
Of course.
Say victory, JP?
Thank you.
You can vote at Junks Radio. And should Ron Rivera have rolled the dice and gone for 2 to win the game? 64% say yes.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to. In fact, we were talking about it. I was doing the Inside the Betting Line show, and as they were moving the ball down, we were talking about it live. We're like, if they score, they're going to go for 2. And I was like, they should.
Well, Ron,
and I think they should because they go for it on 4th down in their own territory in like the first half.
Yeah, the game's hanging on the bounce.
Ron's excuse was the worst of all time. That the players were gassed. You have 1 2-yard play in your back pocket. I thought that was crazy. Now I'm not.
I didn't hear him say that.
Oh, yeah, that's what he said.
If they're gas, you don't want to play another 15 minutes.
Maybe he just thought he could buy a few minutes and they could
exactly. It makes no sense.
10-minute overtime.
Oh, that's right.
But
10 minutes. Yeah.
I get your point.
Yeah, I mean,
you'd rather
I didn't
play
hear him
for
say
10
that.
minutes than for 10 seconds.
I will say
he's supposed to be Riverboat Ron.
It's easy to criticize Ron and criticize a coach that decides to go for 1 after they lose the game. It's easy to do that.
They're late going for 2.
Yeah, but you know what? Those guys, they were gassed.
He doesn't know what to say
They
there.
really were. I mean, it's a long ass drive. They were hurrying. They're hustling. I really thought we had the chance. And that's too bad.
Yeah, you did
I don't
have
know
the
what
chance.
that means.
You had the chance to go for the
He kinda
jugular
didn't know
right
what to
there,
say.
steal the win,
How much
2
does-
yards to go.
How much does the new overtime rules play into your decision now? Because you are virtually guaranteed to get the ball back unless you let them march down.
Right, like the
You know?
Rams did in the Colts game.
I mean,
Yeah.
it does happen, but I think it changes the calculus a little bit. So I was fine with it. And again, we had the ball. You know, it wasn't a great drive. I thought Terry probably did get in, but, you know, it's the way the ball bounces, whatever. It's the way the refs call it.
Game
then-
inches.
That was very close. Very
and then,
close.
you know, we've held him to a 54-year-old field goal attempt, and he buried it. So props to them. So I'm not going to kill him on it.
Yeah.
Well,
Look,
like I said,
offensively, I think everything.
It's easy to criticize after you lose the game.
No, a lot of people were criticizing at the moment.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah, I know. It's just
They were.
It's a tough decision at that time.
I would have kicked
know what
it,
I mean?
but I'm conservative.
Yeah.
I would have kicked
I mean,
it.
I
kinda
would have
just-
gone for it,
I
especially
kick it
on
I
the
mean,
road.
what's his
Time.
reputation? What do the stats say with Ron Rivera in that situation?
Well,
Has
he's
he
actually
go-
been quoted before saying when you're on the road, you go for it. When you're at home, you play for OT.
And I just think, look, if you look at the first 4 games this season,
It was
there've
a
been-
tingle play
There have been
for Ron.
situations.
Yeah, he tingled it.
It was a
There
tingle.
have been situations they've gone for it for 4th down very early in games.
Right,
I mean,
but the
against the
game's not
Denver.
hanging in the balance.
Right. Well, the
a
Denver
little
Broncos
different.
game,
It's
they're down
easier to go
21-3. They
fourth
go
down.
for it on 4th down
There's
there.
so much more on the line when it's
Yeah.
the game
It's all or
is
nothing.
on the line at that point. Like if you go for it in the
Because if he
first
goes-
quarter, who cares?
Would you have had a problem
he-
if he went for it?
Not really, because
Yeah.
you try to steal it on the road.
Would I have
Exactly.
had a problem?
Either way,
I know,
But
but you
I
know
was
he's
on
going
the
to get if he
fence.
goes for 2, doesn't get it, he's going to get
He's gonna
killed.
get crushed all week.
Yeah.
I was on the fence.
I think some people would defend it and say, no, that's what you do on the road. You're right there, 2
some
yards
people
away
would.
from a
You're
win.
right. Some people would.
Most wouldn't because most fans
And if-
are irrational and,
if,
crazy.
And if the offense was gassed, guess what? The defense was probably gassed too.
Well, yeah. I mean, they were getting crushed. I mean, they give up over 400 yards.
Yeah, I mean, the defense is another story. They've given up 30 points for 3 straight weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I meant the Eagles defense. I'm saying in that
Okay.
moment, you're saying, we didn't go for it because the offense was hurrying up and we were gassed. My point is the Eagles
Eagles
defense in that moment is probably gassed too.
I'm sure they're all tired. All I'm saying is you can't win there because if you don't get it, and the people are going to kill you for saying, why didn't you just go to overtime, have a chance to win it in overtime? So it's hard to criticize after you lose the game, but it is what it is. I mean, it was still a hard-fought battle. Offensively, they were very good. Defensively, a lot of question marks.
Imagine this scenario, though. Imagine after that blowout last week and that catastrophic performance by Howell, there's no way around it. Now, you could chalk it up, and I kind of did, as, rookies play, essentially a rookie, have games like that. But if you followed it up with another game anywhere near that, let's say just 2 interceptions and 7 sacks or something, and they only scored 14 or 17 points, his rope is going to be very near the end if he doesn't get
Absolutely.
it. Now that performance buys him 2 or 3 more games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same
It
thing
just
with
keeps buying him time.
same thing with Zach Wilson in New York.
Yeah.
Zach Wilson was this close to being benched, has a good game, threw a couple touchdown passes, looked really good last night.
Mm-hmm.
Buys him time.
Buys him time. Right. Although I think our kid is
Might
better
even-
than Zach Wilson.
Might even bought him more than 2 or 3 games.
I'm just
you know.
saying extra.
Yeah.
Just add it on. Because I think he has 2 games already, but now you add another 2. So I
Look,
think
he
now he's
did
got 4 or
everything.
5.
He did everything in his power to
It
win the
was
game.
an unbelievable performance by the kid coming off of that game last week against a daunting
Definitely.
opponent.
He showed resilience. And
A daunting opponent.
Ron's talked about it, the coaching staff has talked about it, that he faces adversity, and when he screws up, he learns from it, and he goes forward.
And I don't
you
know
saw
what the
that
analytics
yesterday.
say, but I would just based on when I'm watching, I don't know anything, but I didn't think any of the sacks really were on him yesterday.
Largely, I think you're right.
I mean,
I think
maybe
the
one.
one where he
maybe one.
tripped, and that
Okay,
wasn't
all
really
right.
his fault.
All right.
Yeah, he tripped over a foot.
but
He was
most
trying to
of
get through
those-
it. But he made a concerted effort. He ran more, which is what we've been asking for. He threw the ball away
Check
more, which is what
downs.
we've been asking for. He took the check downs we've been asking for. Bieniemy, max protected way more. Moved the pocket, quick throws. It was just everything that we asked for.
He even got De'Ami Brown involved in the game plan.
Right.
De'Ami Brown made plays in yesterday's game.
I was going to tell you that when they were targeting McLaurin early and often in that first quarter, I could tell they had made some adjustments in practice during the
Right.
week. And then they had, they didn't get it to Dotson much, even though he got the touchdown, but they targeted those guys. What was the total targets?
19 between the two of them.
19.
10 for Terry
Big
and
difference.
9 for Dotson.
Yeah,
he
that
only
was a big
brought in
difference.
4 of them. But
Yeah.
but still, you're looking for your best playmakers. You're getting those guys involved early and often and keeping them involved throughout the game.
Yeah. No, it was a super exciting game to watch. I didn't allow myself to really get emotionally involved and kind of hope for a W until late. And then late, I was like, man, we got a real good shot here to actually be 3-1, which would have been massive.
That would have been.
So it is disappointing that you lose in that sense, but at the end of the day, I've never felt more satisfied after a loss.
You do have to have a
I
little
feel
worry about the
comfortable going
defense,
in.
though.
Yeah, but they
You
play
got to
two
be worried
great
about the defense.
offenses.
It's 3 straight games. They've given up more than 30 points.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there were some overtime points here, but over 30 points in 3 straight games. The counter to that is they've faced a couple of the best offenses in the league.
Right.
The Eagles, one of the best offenses, and obviously the Bills. I don't know that I could throw Denver in there.
Well, also in the Bills game, wasn't there a defensive? There was one defensive touchdown scored by the Bills in that game. So you don't blame that
True.
on the defense.
But still a lot of points.
It is
Well,
a
the
lot.
secondary has struggled I think in the Denver game too. Maybe not in the second half, but they were
gave
allowing
up big plays.
Big plays, allowing the deep ball. So, one rookie that did struggle was Forbes, and I'm sure we'll get into it. A.J. Brown in that game last week, we talked about this last week, had one catch for 7 yards. And I said, there's no way that's going to happen. They targeted him 13 times,
Yeah.
and he was the difference in the game
He
offensively.
was a man.
He was
a man out there.
He was. And I don't know what they can do defensively, helping Forbes over the top a little bit more, but he killed him. And so the defense was the question mark yesterday, especially the second
I
half.
don't understand why they didn't put St. Just on him. It would be a more natural matchup to me, like a more physical guy, but maybe they did. Maybe it was just the side he was lining up on. I
Maybe we
have
can
no
ask John
idea.
Allen that, I guess.
I don't really understand it, but
Yeah, in the last 2 games since the Minnesota game where he was bitching and moaning about not being involved in the offense, A.J. Brown has had 14 targets and 13 targets.
Well, I mean, he's the guy. I mean, Smith is great, but A.J. Brown's your go-to, especially how physical he is.
He's the
He can
alpha,
go up and get the
alpha
ball,
number 1 there.
and he can muscle you around. And he
do you
proved
remember
that yesterday.
Did Manny Forbes? Was he traveling wherever Brown was, or was it just they were targeting Forbes' side?
Not sure if he shadowed him throughout the game or not. I don't know that.
Because I would have made the adjustment. But why wouldn't I have my more physical receiver on Brown, my physical DB on Brown?
Well, if
St.
you remember,
Just?
on the first touchdown to Brown, when he caught the ball and he was juking guys, Forbes was on that side. He was on the right side. And then on the second one, end up being the go-ahead touchdown for the Eagles, he was on the left side, wasn't he?
Can't remember.
He beat him
I mean,
down
if
the
you
left
look
side.
at your TV, yeah.
I thought he was on the left side
So
for
he
that
was
touchdown.
traveling with him.
I mean,
that's what
we'd have to ask
appeared
Allen
to me.
that.
I don't know. I didn't pay that much attention to it, but I was like, why don't we have St. Just on him? He's more physical, and then have Manny on Smith.
I could be wrong, but I thought he was on the right side for the first one and on the left side on the
But a
second.
couple of those weren't because he wasn't physical. A couple of times, Brown just ran right by him, juked him.
Yeah,
I agree, but if
double
you have
moves.
a more physical guy, maybe you could slow him down a little bit at the line of script. Like, I don't know. I think we're playing a little too soft on his corners, on those receivers. But
Well, right now, defensively, in points per game through 4 games, Washington is 29th in the league. And yards per game, they're 21st in the league, averaging 352.5 yards allowed. So that is a concern. But it is a moral victory.